Hello, my name is Blossoms and welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and today we are going to be talking about the fact that I've gotten every character that I own in Genshin Impact to Ascension 5. Yep, that means every character I own, which is to say the vast majority of characters in Genshin Impact. I'm only missing a few. I'm missing 6 characters total with Shenhe, Kujosera, Kamisato Ayaka, Klee, Venti, and I cry every time we're still missing Mona, even though I've wanted her since day 1. So yeah, I've put a lot of work into getting every character that I own in Genshin Impact to Ascension 5. We're going to go through each and every one here just to show you guys that I have them at Ascension 5. And I wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons to doing so, as there are some pros and some cons, and this is mostly a big boon for me because one of the things that I find the most valuable and fun in Genshin Impact is trying out different team compositions and different interactions between characters, and then trying to take them in in-game content and stuff. That I do truly enjoy that. That is some of the most enjoyment I get out of the game. So doing this was extremely valuable for me, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same exact way. So I wanted to talk about that in this video. I also wanted to talk about some of the things that I want from miHoYo to improve some of the just quality of life for having so many characters at Ascension 5. I know I'm in a minority here, but the things I want, I think the majority of us also want, so you'll have to let me know in the comment section below on that. But first off, let's start off with the obvious pros to having so many Ascension 5 characters, and that being the fact that I could try out a bunch of different team comps whenever I want. If I get a wacky idea and I want to try it, then I don't have to go and level a character to see if it's actually viable or not. I can generally just slap them on and try it out myself. And that's because not only do I have an Ascension 5, I do have most of their talents to the appropriate levels that you need. There are a couple exceptions, like I'm still lacking on some Kaya books, and I'm still lacking on some Diluc books because I just got him, and I think Goro needs his elemental burst up, but other than that, for the most part, I have every character to some appropriate levels on their actual talent levels too. So that means I can generally just slap them on a team, try them out, and see how much I like it. And having that in the game is super fun for me. It allows me to just try so many things and also bring different content to you guys to be like, oh, hey, maybe you should try this team because I tried it myself and I can vouch for the fact that I think it's pretty darn fun because of maybe X interaction. There's also the fact that when I actually go to do Spiral Abyss, I don't typically get gated out because the monsters are of a certain type or anything. Like if you're a Pyro main DPS player and the whole like half of the first floor and maybe some of the second floor has Pyro on it, you're just going to feel sad because you know your main DPS isn't going to be as effective as usual. And I typically don't have that problem because I can be like, oh, well, you know, I'll just slap on a different main DPS, and I also have a second DPS to cover the second team too, because I just have those resources, and that's really nice. Also wanted to put a quick disclaimer in this. The only reason I have this done at all is because I continue to buy not only the Battle Pass, but the Welkin Moon Pass, which has given me an abundance of resources over my time in Genshin Impact, and my time in Genshin Impact being from day 1. So I've had a lot more time than most people who haven't been playing since day 1, and I've had the Battle Pass the whole time. So I wanted to rule that out if some of you guys were newer and you're like, how is this even possible? I've been here for a minute, and I've been using the Battle Pass, and the Battle Pass gives you a lot of resources to do so. Let's talk about some of the obvious cons too, and some of the things that I'd wish miHoYo would add to the game. And one of the first and most obvious cons that I particularly run into myself all the time is my artifact situation. It's pretty rough, I won't lie, because if I want to use Yoimiya, then I can have my set on her, and it's good, and it works very well. I have solid artifacts for most of my characters, and in fact, most of these characters have an artifact set that works on them. It's just I don't have an abundance of artifacts for all of my characters, so not everybody has their own set. If I want to use Yoimiya today and then I want to turn around and use Diluc like 10 minutes later or something, then I gotta put all of like Yoimiya's artifacts on him and constantly swap around. So this often results in me not having certain artifacts on characters that I typically would, so I can't just leave them and then come back and, you know, repick them up. I have to go through my artifacts again. I have to inspect the subsets and be like, is this the one that was really good on her for her build or anything? And then I have to try and jog my memory for all of that. So not having a loadout system is one of my biggest complaints in Genshin Impact right now. If we could have some sort of system where we could save 1 or 2 loadouts to our characters in Genshin for their artifacts, that would be incredible. That would be one of the biggest quality of life changes for me, and would honestly make this game so much nicer for me. And because that is one of the biggest things I run into. I'm sure any of you who caught my streams before have caught me trying to do some Spiral Abyss, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Why isn't this working out? And then I'll inspect my Rosaria or something, and she just won't have any of these artifacts. Or like Ningguang right now, maybe I'll put her on a team and I didn't check beforehand. I'll be like, my Ningguang is just not doing damage. What's going on? And then I'm missing 2 artifacts. The artifacts I have on her don't even make sense. And that happens to me more often than not because I'm switching around so often. There's also just the factor that 4 saved team compositions just isn't enough. I have at least 4 more teams that I like to use regularly, and I don't think if I had 8 slots that would be enough either. I want to make like 16 teams. I'd like to mess around with a lot of different stuff, but 4 just isn't cutting it. I would at least like to have 8 or something, because I can think of like 4 regular teams that I like to use and rotate between, and oftentimes I just have 3 actually saved teams, and then I just have a 4th that I rotate random characters on to suit whatever I'm feeling for that day. Of course, circling back to artifacts, the fact that you ascend so many characters means you're using your resin on those bosses, and oftentimes that resin could have been used for some more artifacts or better luck on artifacts. So even though I do have a ton of artifacts, like I have plenty of artifacts, as you see here, I have a lot of plus 20 artifacts. And that's just because I've had the sheer time to do so, and I actually make sure to try and do some of my artifact farming daily because it is very worth it, especially if you are doing this. But yeah, I could have plenty of more artifacts if I wasn't ascending characters. So that is a con there. I haven't really noticed that with my weapons though. I don't typically have any problem getting my weapons leveled. I typically just stop at 80 and then 90 some of the weapons that I really like, because that's all you really need to do. And 80 is a totally viable place to be for your weapons. And then when you just want to push your character that little bit farther, then generally that's when I'd go and push a weapon to 90, because that's when it becomes worth it, like on my Zhao, where I want to eke out just that little bit more damage and optimize them just that little bit more for Spiral Abyss and whatnot. Also, any of you new players in Genshin Impact, don't spread your resources out like this. A lot of people, when they're talking to new players about playing Genshin Impact, they talk about leveling up a singular team first, and I would follow the adventure guide for the most part. I would just stick to 3 characters for the vast majority of your adventure ranks, and then start worrying about other characters later, because all these chapters require you to like ascend to 3 characters to phase 5 or to level 80 or whatnot, and that's pretty much all it asks of you. And doing that is the most important for like a newer player. So I'd focus on 3 characters you really enjoy and just try to focus on them. And then once you get to some of the later ARs, then I would worry about leveling up your other characters, as that's a little bit more sound way to do it. And past that, people also recommend, once you get that first team going, is to then just dedicate yourself to leveling up a second team, so you can do Spiral Abyss. That way you can have 2 good teams for Spiral Abyss, and then everything else is just going to be supplementary. You could swap them out for different characters on your teams, and then that way, you know, you can make your Spiral Abyss versatility a lot higher, and eventually you end up like me, where you have all of the Spiral Abyss versatility and can try out different teams for the Spiral Abyss. But for the most part, I would stick to that advice of leveling up 1 to 2 teams first, and then you can start to deviate into being an absolute degenerate like me and leveling them all up. There's also the certain factor that doing so has taken away from some other characters that I could have leveled up. As an example of what I mean by this is Kadahara Kazuha is my only triple crowned character. And I mostly just crown characters that I really enjoy anyway, and he's my favorite character, but he's really the only one that I could take time to dedicate all of those resources, because it is a lot of resources. Those resources could pretty much all go to leveling up Amber for the most part to like her Ascension 4. And so that certainly does take away, like my Zhao here, even though he's level 90, his talents are all at 9, because getting this next part is a lot of resources, and I'm finally just getting around to it, even though Zhao has been one of my favorite characters since 1.3. So it certainly has taken away from some of the potential of my main DPSs, and I do think that is a drawback, but in reality, you don't even need your DPSs to be 90 with the crowned stuff, so it's not too big of a deal. But it definitely is a bit more comfortable to have those DPSs at level 90 with triple crowns, because it does substantially increase your damage. Yeah, I wanted to keep this video relatively short. It's already going on a little bit longer, but I wanted to talk about my experience with getting all my characters to Ascension 5, how much I think it's worth it, which I do still think it's worth it. I know there were kind of more cons and really pros, and the only one real pro is the fact that it's team diversity, but I find that very valuable, and if you find that very valuable, then I suggest you do this, but still take my advice of building 1 to 2 teams first, and then starting to get some other characters going. But yeah, this is super worth it in my opinion. I love being able to swap out as many characters as I can to try out different things, but it did come at the cost of some of those other stuff, and if those cons are a big one for you, then maybe focus in and home in on just, you know, those first 2 teams, and then maybe just try to go for like a 3rd team or something and round up those characters as much as you possibly can, as I think that's a totally viable way to do things as well, and still give yourself really good options for the Spiral Abyss. Anyway, this was a fun experience for me, and I'm glad to have done it, and I plan to get every character in the future that I actually obtain to Ascension 5 as well. So look forward to that too, as it's just going to be continually building on my team diversity. And I guess that is one last minute pro there, is the fact that every character I get from now on, I only have to focus on one character to really level up and get their talents going, because I don't have another character taking away from those resources anymore for the most part, which is awesome and fantastic in my opinion. I hope it gave you some insight as to you know, ascending your characters so high, and if doing so many characters was worth it. And personally, I think it's pretty worth it. I like being able to try weird team comps and trying some like off meta stuff, because I do find that very fun. But I also wanted to give you guys some of the cons to decide for yourself. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. My name is Blossums, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.